Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are very excited to have you with us today. It is interview day, which I always get excited about. I love talking to new people, learning about, what's going on in their lives, how it applies to what we're talking about on the podcast, and, how we can make everyone's lives just a little bit better. So before we dive into who we're talking to today, I'm going to say hello, as I always do, to my co-host, the fantastical, wonderful, amazing Tova. Tova, how are you this lovely spring-ish day? I believe there was frost outside today. I don't know what happened.
It's a little chilly. I'm great. I mean, I am underslept, which is
It's our favorite word.
It's our new word. Because when you're too tired and you can't remember the word tired, you say underslept.
You make it harder.
Yes, but that is in fact what I am. I'm excited for this conversation because I last night did the mistake. It was a mistake. I did 100% on purpose. So it was like, this to-do list is going to get me if I don't get it first. And I was like, I don't care what time I go to sleep, put on a binge-worthy TV show and just get to it. So I actually am in a calmer place than yesterday, but I am excited to record too because it's been so long since we recorded last.
Yeah, we had quite a break because we were at the Mom 2.0 conference, which we'll tell you guys all about in another episode, I think. And we've been running around a lot, so we haven't recorded in a while. But we're really excited about the guest we have today. As you all know, we're talking about unlocking what is holding you back, and this season has been. I'm gonna throw out the word transformational. I am putting it out there. It has changed the way I am looking at my own life. So I would love to hear from any of our listeners at any point, letting me know what they think about this season. Am I alone in my transformation? I don't know. So let us know what you guys think. But without further ado, Tova's going to introduce our amazing guest for the day.
Yes, I am so excited about our guest for today. Partly because I love to go to things like women's conferences, and you always hope you're going to run into people and it's going to be like not like a networking experience. And networking sounds so like corporate-y, but like a networking experience there where you actually like stay in touch with somebody afterwards and it'll actually be a good experience. And I'm excited to say that our guest today, Christine Robinson, sat at our table at lunch. And so here she is. We are so excited to have her. Let me tell you a little bit about Christine. Christine started her career in the traditional HR space before discovering resource management at a Big Four firm. She was drawn to the unique opportunity to partner with finance, human resources, and recruiting to develop and implement operational processes. As resource management leader, US, a top 10 accounting and consulting firm, she brings workforce planning strategy to life and leads a very talented team throughout the United States. She's a member of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging for Success Steering Committee, which is an important priority for her because she is a working mom and a Latina woman. She's also a speaker and a panelist. And if I am getting this right, she spearheaded a attempt to make sure that people had access to formula when there was a formula shortage. So really a jack of all trades. We're so excited to have her. So welcome, Christine.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. I can see Riley's ready to like jump in with a big question. So I'm just going to let you go.
All right. So Christine, I don't know if you've listened to our interviews before, but we never start off easy. So I'm sorry up front, but we're going to ask you a hard question about, unlocking what's holding you back. And that is, how have you in your life unlocked your purpose and passion? Like, how did you get there? Big question.
It is a big question. It's a big question. And I think what's interesting about that question is that there is not a built-in method, right? You don't have a manual that tells you, well, here's step one and step two, and this is what you follow. You don't have a onboarding program, right, that you do
Right.
when you started an organization for a new role, or what you should have, right? So I think that for me personally, it's been a combination of being very naive in a very lucky and fortunate way. And what I mean by that is, you know, I think I've taken some chances in my life because I have been under the assumption that they'll work out well. And that has been helpful for me. I'll tell you, when I was at um this is, you know, many moons ago, when I was moving from one role to another, I was given the opportunity to really take an elevated role. And my initial reaction was, this is so exciting. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to take this, you know, amazing new opportunity. It was going to be a promotion for me. It was going to involve moving to a place that was different, to the suburbs. I'm from Queens. I'm from New York City. I did not drive. So right there, that was a problem.
Right.
But that was just kind of, hey, this is going to be fine. And what I didn't realize is that it was really fundamentally a different role. And I think that if I had sat and kind of thought through that, I would have really triggered myself into kind of a spiral. But I allowed my, I would say, positive mindset to be the leader there. And I jumped into that. And after I agreed to do this was when I was like, oh yeah, you know, I probably need to learn how to drive, and, you know, I probably need to actually, you know, figure this out. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I did it. I moved. I'm still not a great driver, but you know, I think that has been a huge driver for me. And I think it's a combination of, I say being naive in a positive way. It's like, don't allow the unnecessary stress of something that hasn't happened yet to stop you from doing something. So I think it's a combination of that, and then being very, very practical. So I I'll tell you, when I was in, I guess I was in high school, and I was thinking through, you know, where I was going to go to college. My number one, and I kid you not, I wish I could tell you that I had this grand plan, this huge strategy for how I was doing it, and I didn't. What I did was I said, you know what, I need to figure out where I'm going to go to college. I need to have a college degree, and I'm going to go to wherever gives me the best package, right, in terms of scholarships. And I remember my parents saying, don't you want to see the school? Don't you want to actually go look at it? And I'm like, no, you know, this is where I'm going to go. So again, girl from Queens, and I ended up going to college in Bowling Green, Ohio. Never been there before. First day I saw it was when I was there for orientation. And so again, combination of being practical but very naive, was not prepared for the culture shock of going into Ohio, you know, and what that was going to mean. Luckily, I think I was very fortunate that I made some of the best friends that anyone could have while I was there, and it was great. But hopefully that answers the question. That I think those were the two ways that kind of combined to allow me to unlock my potential.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So I have so many directions I want to go in, so I'm like stuttering
Sure.
here.
Sure.
But I think, you know, I find it very interesting when people answer that question, because it's so dependent on how you define purpose and passion. And so I always like to hear like how people answer it, because it really shows you like what is the most, you know, important aspect of that for you. And I love that you talked about that story from when you were in high school and you're like, no, I'm just going to go. I mean, partly that's like practical. I had a very similar experience. I was like, I'm going wherever they give me the biggest scholarship. And that's a plane ride away from my family. Like that was the plan. And but I think a lot of people get hung up on their expectations and like what might happen, as you were saying. So do you think that in your life growing up, there was something that trained you to that thought process? Do you think like, did your family help you kind of get there? How did you end up that way? Because not everyone does. And I'm just curious.
That is a great question. I would say that there must be, right? So I don't know, again, that it was formal, right?
Yeah.
That you know, someone sat down and said, you know, here's the way you should do this. But through observation, my my grandmother immigrated from Peru, from Lima, Peru to New York City, not speaking the language and having children of different ages and needing to make a life here. Right. And so without having spoken to her directly about this particular topic, my sense is that she didn't have it all figured out, but she did it. She did it anyway. Right. And I think that probably is a driving force that resonates, whether you are thinking about it or not. And I certainly think that that's been the case, just even too with my upbringing. I think my parents are people who they very much do first and then think. And I don't know if that's good life advice or not, but it's what I learned, that's for sure. And I do think that especially for women, we need more of that.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we're thinking, and that at times could block us from taking opportunities. And so, again, certainly not suggesting don't think, but I think that there could be certain times that you're thinking your way out of an opportunity, and you shouldn't. So that certainly has stuck with me. And I would say from a work perspective as well. Generally speaking, if I have the interest and excitement about something, I'm going to say yes to it and then figure out the details of the how later. I find the how sometimes not quite as exciting. And so I'm like, I'll deal with that later.
I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've talked about throughout this season, because you also said you're gonna jump in, but you're also practical, right? Like, you went where there was financial package. And we've talked about how there's that balance of being prepared and being willing to not get caught in the spiral, like you said. And that's what's, you can be, all right, I'll be prepared, but also, we're just going to do it. So what happens, or does it happen? And I'm wondering now too, now that you're a mom, and I feel like there's certain things that kind of get bumped higher as priorities once you start having kids. How does that balance when it comes to, being practical, but I don't want to use the word naive, hopeful. I think hopeful is the great word. We just, when we were at Mom 2.0, Jen Hatmaker, her last tip was to believe in hope, right? And it's not a matter of silver lining things. It's just being hopeful. So how do you balance that practical side, right? Because I know at least one listener, me, is listening to you talk who needs to take some leaps, right? And I know I need to do some things, but I'm also like, okay, cool, but there's rent, right? And there's food and I have to pay for things. So how do you balance those two things so you don't let the practical hold you back, but you also know that it's there so you can feel confident?
Well, that's a really interesting thought. And what I would say is that as a mom, and like many of us, we have many, many different priorities, right? We're certainly stretched and pulled, in a couple of different directions. I would say that for me, it's a mixture of being very aware of how, I know this probably sounds strange, but how it makes me feel, and leading with that, because at the same time that you're doing something that is practical, right? That is important for whatever your goal is, whether that's education or to use your words, paying the rent, you feel good about that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of let that be my guiding light. And that has been, I think, something that has served me very well in any stage of my life. And this is, I don't know why I'm thinking of this example, but what comes to mind is I remember it was my first night at college. Literally, like I had moved in that day, and everyone was going out, and I really wanted to go out because that's the type of person that I was, and probably many would say am still. And I remember being very, excited by the whole vibe of a bunch of people just starting to get to know each other and going out. And I remember thinking, I don't feel like this is a good idea. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm going to have many, many, many opportunities. And so I don't know that that's really a great scientific approach, but it didn't make me feel that that was the right choice, at the time. And I think that has something that's occurred many times, even just in the workplace, where you're in tough situations or you're having to make a decision that's impactful. I'll tell you what, I was recently traveling in India, and I was going to be away from my kids and from my family for 2 weeks, which is really a long time. I have babies, so that's a long time. And so it was hard because that's certainly a push pull of like, well, I want to be home, but I want to do this. And at the end of the day, what I went with is I really want to do this. I feel like this is the right thing. And so I led with that. And then what I decided was, once I made the decision, well, I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm going to get my kids all excited about the fact that I'm going to India. So we watched this like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse episode where they were in India, and, they got all excited about it. They're like, oh, mommy's going to go to this other part of the world. And I started looking up these different ways to get them engaged, on the fact that I was, in my trip, and looking up when we could FaceTime and when we could do these different things. And we have these two, I have a 4-year-old. So we have these 2 jars where he's got one that has a plane on it and one that has a house. And he moves these little balls from one jar to the other, each morning, so that he understands when I'm coming home. And I don't know if that's for him or for me, but maybe it's both, but it helps alleviate my guilt about it for sure. And I think it really helps them. And the other thing that we do is, not that you asked about this, but we have these little, I do these little treat bags. So they open up a little, it's like these little things that I got at like Party City, but they open up these little gifts, each day that I'm away. And it just helps me to not feel like I've left them. And it helps them to feel like I've, been thinking about them. I don't know, you could say it, sometimes it backfires though, because I will say, my son did say to me recently, he's like, when are you traveling again?
Yeah, I was going to say, are they like waiting for you to go away?
I was just thinking that, like, my kids, if I did that, my kids would be like, cool, mom, nice to see you again. Are you leaving soon? Like, what's going on?
Same. Exactly right. Ours are older though. Ours are like prepared for that sort of thing. I want like a sound to go off on the podcast every time one of our guests talks about their inner voice. Because this is, we talk about it so much on the podcast and everything we do and all of our coaching and just everywhere, because it's fundamental to being able to make decisions and live a limitless life and enjoy what you're doing, is understanding your own inner voice and being able to hear it and parse it out from, whatever cultural expectations, whatever societal expectations, whatever, unhealthy words are coming from, who knows, from some sort of conditioning. And you obviously were just talking about that. And what I extra love, is that a thing? What I love the most about it is that you then peppered it with this practicality, which we haven't had that conversation on the show before, but I really, really appreciate it, because it's such a good example for folks who are like, oh, I don't know, my intuition is telling me I should do this, but then what if X, Y, and Z, right? And then they get stuck on that, what if X, Y, and Z? And what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say anyway, is that, you're listening to your intuition, you're following your gut, you're listening to that inner voice, and then you're figuring out the practical steps afterwards, right? Like you make the decision and then you like go through the logistics. Whereas I think so many of us, and we keep saying this while talking to you, I think so many of us have that flipped. We spend so much time thinking about the logistics, trying to work it all out, and we never make a decision, right? We just sit on the fence. So I wanted to sort of reiterate that for folks who are listening, because it's so important. And I love this practicality aspect, because I think that might make people feel a little more comfortable with the concept and a little more at ease in applying it in their own lives. So I do want to ask you one more question, and then we're going to take a break. What holds you back? Like what keeps you from doing the things you want to do in your life, or what gets in your way? What are your stumbling blocks?
That's an easy one. Unrealistic expectations. Mm-hmm. That's a huge one. And pretty much applicable in, I would say, any area, whether that's work, personal life, right? As a parent, I find myself feeling very, whether that's because I'm putting the pressure on myself or other reasons, but pressure to do all of these different things. And I recently went through an exercise, and I had talked to Tova about this, related to essentially this Well, it's funny now hearing you say this, Riley, because it's again, it's this practicality. It's almost like I didn't know that I was doing it at the time, but that's what it is, right? And
Yeah.
so the story is, I was having one of those weeks, and it was just a lot. I had a lot on my plate, from a work perspective. We had a couple of events going on that week from a family side of the house. Just there's always something. There's always sports and activities, and I had a kid that was sick. I wasn't feeling great myself. Work was crazy that week, and so I had all of these millions of things that were in my head that I had to get done, and that's what it felt like. Truly, it felt like 1 million things. And so I remember just sitting there and thinking, the way that I am feeling right now is really kind of the same as in my field in resource management. It's essentially kind of putting these puzzle pieces together of how are you going to accomplish a certain body of work with the people that you have, if I had to drill it down. And so I thought, all right, well, if I was meeting with someone who came to me in my job as a resource manager and said, this is the body of work that needs to be done, what would I do? And I kind of took myself, I had this sort of out of body experience where I took myself out of the situation. So all the emotions were able to come out of that. And I thought, all right, well, the first thing I'd want to understand is, what is the work? First of all, right? Like, we keep saying, I keep thinking, hey, there's this million things, but how many is it? Is really a million? Is it 150? Is it 200? What are the things, right? So I literally sat there and I made a list of, and when I say everything, I mean everything. I made a list of all of the things that had to get done. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to look at this over the course of a typical month. So I picked like a 4-week period. And I said, well, I mean, when I sat there and I listed out commuting, I sat there and I listed out, well, typically one of my kids is, at some point in the month, one of my kids is going to get sick. So now I have to deal with, going to the doctor,
Yep.
and I put everything in there. I have a job, right? So I dedicate quite a bit of time, to that. So I put that down there, and then I put down, and this was the key, was I didn't frame it in the amount of time that I had. I didn't say, well, I have this amount of time. How am I going to do this? I said, what are all the things in my head that I think that I feel like I need to get done? And so I put everything, right? So it's like all these pressures that I thought that I had on my, it's like, you're supposed to, go to therapy, and you're supposed to like work out this many times per week, and you're supposed to do this. And by the way, get 8 hours of sleep, and, do your makeup and make sure your hair looks good. And my hair is long, so it takes a really long time to dry. It's like not a quick process, so I put all of that down, and I'm like, well, it takes about this long to get ready. And, oh, by the way, volunteer at the school this amount of times, or, or what, I don't know. But basically that's what I was doing to myself. And so I wrote all these things down. And after I had that, I said, this is, so the first thing was I got very stressed out, right? But then again, I said, well, if someone came to me and I was advising them, right, and this was, audit work, let's say, as opposed to the life of a mom, that there wouldn't be any emotions related to that. That's just the work, right? And so I had this list of things, and then I thought, well, who is my my workforce? And in this case, it was me, right? So I am the labor pool, in this situation. And so I kind of added that up, and I said, well, if this is the body of work that needs to occur, how many hours? Because I needed to quantify that. Well, I found that the work that I was attempting to do equaled it was 967 hours in a 4-week period. And the hours, so here's the thing, the hours that exist in a 4-week period are 672 hours. So with math, right, I was able to see, I'm like, so, okay, there's simply not enough time to do all those things, right? Like that's not even possible. I would need 12 more days in an average month in order to do those things. And so at first that was really overwhelming, but my second immediate reaction was like, oh, I'm not crazy. This is not possible to do.
Right.
So that opened up a lot, I would say, for me, because now it's like, well, do I really need to do all those things? And do I really need to do them that often? And also, which ones am I just not going to do because there's simply not enough time, right? And so that was extremely helpful in terms of an exercise for me. And it became, quite frankly, a lot easier for me to think about it and not to feel guilty about it, because, I mean, you wouldn't, again, in the workplace, you wouldn't feel guilty about being asked to do something that is completely illogical, right? And so in my job as a mom and wife and this human being and in this life that I'm living, I'm not going to make myself feel guilty about something that's not possible. I'm going to figure out a way to do what is possible. And by the way, the things that are on that list that are priorities to me, not to other people, but to me. So
Right.
that's kind of how I figured that out.
Well, I think I know we need to take a break, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I think what you and I had that conversation a couple months ago, and I have not stopped thinking about it. And I think there's a couple things about it. So first of all, one thing that Riley and I are trying to do, just from a business perspective, is do more like time blocking. It's because it's so easy to get pulled, but also to like set a timer, like do a realistic expectation of the tasks on the day and say, okay, this is a 45-minute task. Because how often do I dread a 45-minute task because in my head it's a 3-hour task, right? And it's literally a 45-minute task. And this was something that we tried out a couple times when we were away together, where we said, okay, we think prepping, we've already done all the work, so we think really doing a day of prep for this presentation should last no more than 30 minutes. And if it does, it means that we're spiraling and we're not being productive. And I think, if I remember, it was like 23 minutes. Like,
it was super fast.
But we set a timer, right? We limited ourselves, and we even limited ourselves because we don't want to start right away. So we're like, all right, we're going to set a 10-minute timer so we can read a little bit more because we're relaxing in the desert. But it's very empowering to actually look at something and look at how realistic it is. Like, I look back at my Mother's Day that just happened, and there were a lot of reasons it was a weird, rough day, but one of them was an unrealistic expectation of what could be done in that day. Like, I could not sit and like snuggle with my kids in the morning and watch TV and also go to Home Depot and get plants. I had to pick between the two. And instead, I didn't pick between the two. I mean, I did. I snuggled with the kids, but then all day I kept on my dirty clothes because I kept thinking I was going to make it to Home Depot and get plants in my like magical time warp that did not exist. And then I was upset that I was in my dirty clothes all day, and I was like, I could have changed it. Let's felt good about what I was wearing for Mother's, And so, there's a lot of power in there, but there's also something you said about being able to like release the shame and guilt. When we look at our to-do list and we see all the things that we think we should do or have to do, and that's a whole conversation. And we've had that conversation about like who puts those things on our list. But and then we see what we actually can do. And so we really should not be carrying that. I don't like to use the word should, but in this case I will. Like, we do not need to carry that guilt or that shame of having not achieved an unrealistic expectation. And I know, so when I started working with a financial advisor, and she went through my whole budget, and I carried a lot of very negative relationships to money and guilt. And like in my head, even though I knew I didn't spend frivolously, I was like, well, I must be spending frivolously. That's the only reason that I don't have enough money to like cover my budget. And she came back to me and she's like, so the reason you don't have enough money is because you don't make enough money. Like, and I was like, oh, like it's not that I'm doing something wrong. Like, she's like, there's certainly things that we can cut out, but you're not frivolous at all. Like, I've looked at your money for the last like 6 months. Like, and that was like, oh, okay. So I'm going to set the shame and guilt aside and be more realistic with my expectations of myself. So I just want to highlight that. I'm very glad you shared that story because it has, I don't want to say haunted me, uplifted me, and like it's like a friendly ghost, It's like,
that's fantastic. Oh, I love it.
But with that, we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Know what I really love to do?
Take baths, go for walks, read, drink margaritas, hike.
Yeah, not what I was referring to. We're recording a commercial right now.
I do, but I'm thinking outside the box, being adaptable.
As I was saying, what I love to do is host our live monthly workshops.
Oh, right. That's what we were talking about. Me too. They are a lot of fun to put together and host every month. And we can bring margaritas, so...
Join us for live conversation as we get a bit deeper into topics near and dear to our hearts. We go through everything from self-care to setting boundaries.
We share coaching tips, practical advice, and take questions from the audience. It's a whole lot of fun.
Sign up for our newsletter today at goboldlyinitiative.com/contact to make sure you hear about all the upcoming Go Boldly workshops.
You definitely don't want to miss out. Now, back to that show.
All right. I think we're back. I'll be honest, I was like reading all these questions like, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of time. What do I want to ask you? But I do have a question. And it was something that another guest mentioned, I want to say in a previous season, but I can't remember because everything runs into each other. But you have talked about, listening to that feeling that tells you, yes, I'm going to leap, right? And I'm going to let it override the voice in my head that says, don't do this, like this could be scary or whatever. So it's kind of like a two-part question, but I'll ask them at the same time. When did you learn that the positive voice, the voice encouraging you to leap, was actually the one that you need to follow, was actually your inner voice? And the other voice was maybe just like a negative Nancy that wanted to keep you safe, but that just meant never doing anything fun or interesting or exciting ever again. If you learned that, like, when did that happen? And then the follow-up is like, how did you figure that out? Because honestly, we had a guest talk about that recently, that like, it's the positive voice is the one you want to listen to, not the negative one. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So like both the when and the how, to learning that it's the one that's encouraging you, that is the true feeling that you need to follow.
Super interesting question. And I'm reflecting on the way that you position that, because this is quite frankly the first time I have ever thought about it that way. And I say that because I don't know that I've ever really thought about two different voices, meaning like the whole like cartoon, angel on your shoulder, devil on your shoulder, right? I don't know that I've ever thought about it that way. I can only answer this personally, right, for myself, which is that I don't think it's two voices. It's just the same voice. It's the same inner voice that's telling me. Maybe I'll say this differently. It's one voice reacting to all of the different things with me. So same voice that's saying, that's a bad idea, that's a good idea. I oversimplified that. It would be a lot easier if it said it so clearly. It does not.
Wouldn't that be great?
It's very
That would be amazing.
What actually happens is that it makes me feel something. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. It makes me feel like, this is a person that makes me feel kind of bad about myself, or this is a person that's really fun. I want to be around them again. It's probably someone I should either consider collaborating with or hanging out with, right? I will say that that's different than, as I think what you were starting to describe, of the self-talk, because that is, I would be lying if I said I didn't have that, right? So that's part of it. But I think those are two different things. One is the guide that's going to actually help you make a decision to go do something. And the other one is the negativity that sometimes comes from, this person is looking at me weird, or, I just had something really positive and exciting happen in my life, and this person is clearly having an adverse reaction to that. And now I start making up stories in my head about, well, maybe I didn't really deserve that, or, this and that. And so that is true, and something that I think all of us continue to work on. But that's different than the thing that made me decide to do it in the first place, right? The thing that made me decide to do it in the first place was the way that this, as you said, inner voice manifests itself in the way that I feel. And I will tell you, I have one of my best friends from college, actually. She sends me all the time those cartoons of the heart and the brain. And she's like, do you have the brain part or just the heart? Because that's the only one that I see you leading with, in terms of making your decisions. So take that, for what it's worth. But I do think that, in terms of the how, I do think that I learned that at a very early age, and I don't know that learned sounds so deliberate. I don't know that I learned it, right? I don't know that I was taught, but I think that what I was encouraged to do as a child was feel the way that I felt, right? And so if I had a situation, and I did have a situation that comes to mind when I was in fourth or fifth grade, where without getting into the specifics, something had happened in school that really upset me, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I really was upset. Like I really like I was little, so holding back emotions was like not really something that was going to happen. So I remember I was crying, I was very emotional. And it didn't even occur to me, because of the way that I was raised and all these different things, to not express why, right? So when I was asked, I didn't, kind of like hide about it. I said, well, this happened and this is not okay. And basically this can't happen again, and I remember my parents had to actually come pick me up from school, and we there was a change that was made actually at the school after that. And so I say that because I didn't get in trouble. My parents weren't embarrassed that I did that. I do think that had they been, I imagine that would have had a very profound impact on my ability to maybe not only listen to the inner voice, but certainly to act on it, right? If I had been, punished for doing that, or had, a negative reaction. But I do think that is where it, to bring it full circle, I think about my own kids, and it's like, well, what type of behavior am I encouraging in them, right? And the way that shapes perhaps the decisions that they make later as adults. So not to get too deep, but that's what I thought about when you said that.
Well, we love to get too deep.
Yes, absolutely.
That is like the name of our game. I know, Riley, you have a question, and I
That's
don't
okay. Go
have
ahead.
a question. So I'm just going to make a comment, which is, I have no idea about your relationships with your parents, but if it's a good one, I highly encourage you to like give them a call after this, because I don't want to undervalue what they did for you.
Yeah.
Because I think that your distinction of negative self-talk and this inner voice that I'm going to follow is one that many women, including many we met last weekend at the conference, are still trying to separate. They are still trying to untwine them and figure out like, oh, that mean voice is not the one I'm supposed to follow. And yes, it's me, but it's not the one I'm supposed to follow. So I just, want to give your parents a hug and say like, thank you on your behalf, because I think that it is a big deal that they were able to encourage your freedom of expressing who you were. And now, Riley, yeah, I have no questions.
No, I absolutely concur. I think that what I am finding, one of the things I'm finding most interesting about this conversation is that I feel like you have flipped the order of operations for most things. And I mean that in like the best possible way, because I feel like a lot of the women we speak to are doing things in reverse, and that's what's holding them back. So I want to highlight that for anyone who's listening, because if you're, listening to the mean voice, that, yeah, it's your voice. But if that's what you're listening to first, and you're giving that voice more power or more credence than the other voice, then you're never going to even hear your intuition, right? Like it's just going to be drowned out. So I love this. I'm going to think about it for a while. I think I love this concept of flipping the order of doing things, right? Like, okay, yeah, there's that voice, but I'm going to listen to my intuition first, and then I'll deal with this other stuff. And we're not suggesting that, anyone should ignore those voices. Like if you're saying mean, if you have a lot of mean inner dialogue, which all of us have had at some point, then yeah, you've got to hear it and deal with it. But it doesn't have to make the decisions for you. And I think that, I just want to keep highlighting that. But I do have a question. So I will ask you another one. I would love to hear, and I'm excited to know what you say to this. I would love to hear how you deal with failure. Like, how do you deal with mistakes or, things that don't go your way?
I make mistakes every day, multiple times per day. I see them as a very normal, expected part of life in all of its forms. I am certain that if I went through all of the roles that I play, I mean, mid-morning here, I could probably list out a couple that I made today already, right? So,
Yeah,
so
same.
the way I say that because the way that I deal with them is it's you have to kind of roll with the punches of realizing that they're going to happen. So rather than feeling scared about making them in the first place, I let go a long time ago because the mistakes are going to happen, right? So I think as when you take that big leap, whether that is again professionally or when you're having a child, that's like a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not so much being scared of, well, what if I make a mistake? It's saying, well, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to make a couple of mistakes, many of them, right? And so that accepting that as fact changes the entire course of the way that you handle it when it happens. It's you're expecting it. And I'm not saying you're expecting it because I'm like this negative person that's like just waiting for
Right.
the ceiling to crash down on me. It's just, look, we're going to make mistakes, and I'm very curious about. I find it almost like a research study of, hey, there's this thing that happened. How'd that happen? Why did that happen? What led to that, right? So being more maybe curious about what led to it and what the perhaps perfect storm was that was happening at the time that occurred that allowed that to happen, and not making it so personal, because generally speaking, unless you did something really malicious, you're really not you didn't choose to make the mistake, right? That's not what a mistake is. And so I think that is a really important thing. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to have feelings associated with it, right? That you're not going to. I mean, my son got hurt, and I was very upset about that. If I had been a little closer, if I had caught him differently, or if that dangerous thing wasn't right there and it hadn't fallen on his foot, whatever the thing is, that's real. You're gonna feel those things, but you also have to separate, as we were describing. I didn't put the thing there, right? I didn't set him up and tell him to go grab it, right? Those are very different things. And so really, how do I deal with them? It's just realizing that they're going to happen, and when they happen, just being curious about not only what led to them, but also acknowledging, hey, this is something that this sucks,
Yeah.
and I'm going to
Yes.
let myself feel that. And really, too, letting yourself feel that. I mean, I have times where, mistakes come in many different forms, and you're going to, as a human being, you're going to beat yourself up about certain things more than others. I don't have that figured out. Again, that would just be completely misleading. If I said that I didn't do that, I don't have the secret sauce for that. If you do, I'm very, very interested.
Working on it.
But I
Working
think
on it.
it's one of those things where it's like, for me personally, those things happen, and I allow myself to just sit in that feeling. What I will say is that I have learned this I have learned over time, is that trying to force myself not to think about it never works. That's for me anyway. I don't know about anyone else. Like, trying to distract myself from it, and hey, there's this thing, and maybe I feel embarrassed or whatever negative emotion. Trying to go and do something else and not think about it, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back tenfold, that night or the next morning or whatever it
Yep.
is. So if I need to take a day to just feel like crap about it, that's what I'm going to do. And then, you have to move on.
Right.
And so that's been my recipe for dealing with mistakes in all its forms: relationships, motherhood, professionally, certainly.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just impressed that somebody doesn't put their feelings in a little box and puts them on a shelf and actually like
Beautiful boxes on the shelf.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
no, I'm working on that. I'm working on
Open
that.
them later. Yeah, do you
It
have a
seemed like
question?
you had a question. I was waiting for you.
Okay. We're talking over each other today. I don't know. So let's talk about making ourselves sort of take chances and get past that hump. What advice would you give people to um work through that mean inner voice that does come out for a lot of people? Do you have thoughts on like how people can work on that if they didn't have your amazing parents and the ability to like start this process when they were very young. You know, if somebody's coming to this now later in life and going, "Oh, I've been listening to the mean voice," like what's your advice?
Yeah, I would say, and I'll give you an example. So what comes to mind is, and Tova had mentioned this, there was the very unfortunate infant formula shortage this past summer, and I had an infant, right? And so this was like traumatizing for me. And I am not in the formula business. I certainly didn't have necessarily tons of extra time, but I had this idea of, hey, I have this professional expertise in resource management, which is all about supply and demand and matching people who need something with people who have it. One of these things is kind of like the other, right? And so I was sitting at a water park with my like sleeping baby, like wet and just like asleep on me. And for anyone who's been trapped under a sleeping baby, like your mind wanders, right? And I start thinking about this and I'm like, hey, I kind of think I can maybe do something about this. And then I immediately was like, no, that's stupid. And I'm like, no, but it's actually not that stupid, you know, and what would that look like? No, you don't have the time for that. No, but I could make the time, right? It's kind of like, it's how much time would it even take? You know, it's like almost challenging that idea of, again, in that example, it's you don't have the time. It's like, well, first of all, you don't even know how much time it would take. So it's like this voice of you don't have the time doesn't even know what it's talking about, right? It's again trying to be that practical. There is I think this shroud that the negative voice covers itself in, that's practicality. And the thing is that it's not, right? So if you really challenge that, it's like you have this voice telling you you don't have the expertise. And it's like, well, I don't know, have you ever been in a infant formula shortage before? Do you have the expertise? I don't know that anyone does, right? So it's like, why wouldn't I have the expertise? I don't see anyone else doing anything about it, right? So it's kind of reframing that perspective that the negative voice, I think people have this perspective that that's your brain talking, that's your logical side. And it's actually not. It's actually not. It's that's emotional in a different way, in a negative way, but that's not necessarily practical, right? And so I think it's challenging that. And then also realizing that there is this concept of there is always going to be, very similar to as you were describing the mistakes, right? And the negativity associated with that. Someone's always going to have something to say. Something always could have been done differently. It always could have been done better. And I think going into anything that you do, realizing that someone's going to have something to say about it, just go into it knowing that. And then you're not going to be surprised when someone makes a comment or something maybe doesn't go exactly the way you were expecting. You're still not going to like it, still going to feel crappy, but you're not going to be surprised by it, right? It's one of those things that it's not going to rattle you to the point that it's going to knock you completely off of your game, that you won't be able to continue. And I think those are two different things too. Being able to recognize that, yes, this happened and it sucks, but okay, I was expecting something to happen that sucks and I'm going to keep going, right? And that's this example of this thing that I did, you know, over the summer. And it turned out to be, in my eyes, wildly successful because we were able to feed almost 600 babies nationally. And so was it thousands of babies? No, maybe someone might think that, but it's a lot of babies, you know. And I think
it's a lot of babies by any metric.
Feels pretty good for me, right? And so so I think that's part of it, is just allowing yourself to really distinguish between the fact that just because something is negative doesn't mean it's practical. And I think that there is this view that when you're, again, this whole idea of, you know, leading with your heart and going with your feelings, that doesn't mean you're being impractical. You can be very logical and very much a problem solver by doing that. And yes, it's creative and it's innovative and it's interesting, but it could also be smart and logical and intelligent and collaborative. And those are good things, right? That's actually, those are leadership qualities last time I checked, right? So those are, that's I think the part that people sometimes miss. And that's what I would say is the biggest, most important driver for making those big leaps. So hopefully that's helpful.
Oh yeah, I think that's fantastic. So good. We need to take one more quick break. So we're going to do that. And when we come back, we'll do some rapid fire questions and wrap up. We'll be right back, everyone. In case you didn't already know, we love talking.
True story. More than simply talking, we love researching, prepping, and bringing this podcast to life.
We launched We Go Boldly with the goal of reaching people dealing with the kinds of questions and concerns that we also face.
Things like how to hear my inner voice, how to make sure my habits are worth it and stick, how do I feel my feelings and still manage to function.
After years of personal work and lots of trial and error, we realized we have a lot to share on these topics.
Now we've been broadcasting for over a year, and we are proud of our podcast.
And to no one's surprise, we still have a lot to say and talk about.
We sure do. We need your help to keep going. Every episode takes time and money to create, and we would love your support.
So, if you like what we are doing, please support us by joining our Patreon community and becoming a monthly subscriber.
Join our Patreon community today at patreon.com/wegoboldly. We are so grateful to all of our supporters. Now, back to the show.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Before we took a break, we were getting some fantastic advice. If you didn't hear it all, rewind and try again, because that was very, very good advice for people who are listening. We're almost out of time, so I want to make sure we get to our rapid fire questions because they're fun and interesting, and I like them. So that's what I'm saying. Tova, are you rapid fire questioning today?
Oh, you can do it today. You can
Okay.
do it.
I'll do it. We're planning our logistics live, people. So, all right, Christine, we are going to ask you 5 questions. I am not allowed to ask follow-up questions, and you can just answer off the top of your head whatever comes to your mind. No pressure. All right. So question number 1. What is on your nightstand?
My nightstand is 2 books, Peter Pan and a book that my college roommate wrote.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Question number 2. Who is at the top of your playlist right now?
That would be, I believe, Tom Petty.
Okay. I love that. All right. Number 3. What is one thing you haven't done yet that you have always wanted to do?
Route 66 road trip.
You had that like at the tip of your tongue. That's amazing.
Yes.
I would not, it took me forever to answer it. Sorry. I know. No follow-ups. I didn't ask any questions though. Question number 4. What is your favorite beverage?
Strawberry milkshake.
Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. Question number 5. Aside from necessities, what one thing could you not go a day without?
Lipstick.
Love it. You're very good at these rapid fire questions.
Yeah, I wish we had 5 more.
I know. Everyone else takes a much longer time. That's you're like ready to go. Thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing your perspective. I really feel like this was such a great learning opportunity for me, but also for our listeners. So I really, really am thrilled that you were here and you were so open and honest with all of us. I think that's amazing. So thank you for that. Tova, I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, only just that, I mean, I know you have a blog, and where can people follow you and find you if they want to reach out for speaking or panelist or all of those good things?
Yeah, resourcemanagementinthewild.com is the blog, and I'm on LinkedIn. If you can't tell, love talking to people, love engaging with people. So feel free to get in touch that way.
Awesome.
And
That's
thank you for having me. This is awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So that does it for us this week. We will be back next week with more on unlocking what is holding you back. Until then, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.